Maybe we should start with that. We've never really talked about that. Father Larkin.
Well,
Father
I have the privilege of my first day in St. Peter's was Father Larkin's first day, and it was his first class. And he looked, I could see the class in absolute terror. And he said, "Right, we'll do wonderful, wonderful. Things are brightening amazingly." Cheers, Colm. Sorry, folks.
Cheers, sorry.
No problem.
You're the talent. So anyway, he said, we'll do we look at Keats's Ode to Nightingale. And he said, I want somebody to read it. And he caught my eye. Something happened. He said, you stand up and read. So I knew Keats's Ode to Nightingale off by heart.
At what age?
Oh, I don't know, 13,
What?
14.
13, 14?
13 and 14.
You knew it off by heart?
Yeah. I can still do most of it. So, of course, he was horrified because here was somebody who, you could see me not even look at the book. And I'm thinking, Christ almighty, are they all going to be like this? So after about 5 lines, he said, right, sit down. And we got on wonderfully well after that. He was a good man.
At St. Peter's, there were day boys, but there were mainly boarders. So I was a boarder. And the day boys were very important because they could get you cigarettes and they could post letters and do messages generally. But there were very few, actually, boys from Wexford town in the school.
Well, my friend Billy Kelly, one year he started up a bookmaking business among the boarders. And he made enough to take himself and his father to the Grand National and wherever it is, Liverpool or whatever. Yeah, he made a lot. But I remember I used to call from, because we were day boys, we would have to come back to study at 5 to 7, I think, from 5 to 7. And I would collect him. And I arrived in one day and he said, sit down. I said, stop, I'm watching this. And he said, I've taken a bet on a triple, 3-horse thing. So if one horse wins, the money, the winnings, that goes on to the next one, and that goes on to the next one. He said, this is the third one. The first 2 won. He said, if this one wins, I'll have to leave the country. He said, because I'll owe the guy hundreds of pounds. So we sat there bare knuckle. The third one lost. But he was quite a nerve. We had great fun.
I asked Father Larkin about you once.
Is it?
And he told me that the style, elements of the famous style that became your signature style were there from very early on, and the handwriting from very early on was that you had a beautiful handwriting and that you had a fully formed, or he thought a fully formed style, aged 14, 15. And he still has, I think, some of your notebooks or essays from that time. Is that true about your style and your handwriting?
Well, I mean, how do I know? But yes, I mean, I was writing from the age of about 12, 13. I mean, my sister gave me a copy of Joyce's Dubliners when I was, 12. And I was bowled over by this, because here was writing that was about life as I knew it. It wasn't a Wild West yarn or a detective story or a thing about English public school boys getting up to japes and so on. This is real life. And I was immediately galvanised. And my Aunt Sadie, who lived down the road, and everybody has an Aunt Sadie who lives down the road, and she had a Remington typewriter which was as big as a tractor and made almost as much noise. And I used to go down to her on Saturday afternoons, and sometimes when I was coming back from school, and I would bash out dreadful imitations of Joyce's Dubliners. I mean, really dreadful, embarrassing even to think about it now. So I kept at that for, plugged away at that till I was 17 or 18, and then I wrote a story called The Party, which is not very good, but when I'd finished it, it didn't belong to me anymore. It had drifted free. I felt like I'd given birth to a baby that was now something else in the world. And it was that moment I knew I could be a writer, because, up to then everything was me. Suddenly I realised that writing is not about me at all. It's making something and putting it into the world. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah. I'm interested in the Dubliners thing because there's a sly joke. The first sentence of The Dead is Lily, the caretaker's daughter, was literally run off her feet. And the first sentence here at one of the sections is Helen, the woman of the house, was literally run off her feet. And then, of course, you start, well, not literally, no. In other words,
I had a lot of fun in this book of poking fun at my great predecessors and paying homage to them. I mean, you know as well as I the difficulty for our generation of Irish writers, and even for the last generation, previous generation, was that, there were these giants standing behind them. We don't seem to have a tradition of middle-brow fiction. It's all, we aim either for greatness or we don't do it at all. So, we have standing behind us everybody from Swift up to Beckett and Yeats. And I always compare them to Easter Island statues looming over us, saying, look at me and look at you, little man. What are you going to do? So I found it quite a challenge. I still do. And we found various ways of coping with it. Neil Jordan went into the movies, although I still think of Neil as a novelist. He's written a wonderful novel that's coming out this year. But we were all trying to escape that enormous tradition that we had behind us. It was a sustenance as well, I suppose. And, we went to England and we saw that, I don't know about you, but every time I'm in England, I have the feeling that the English are just about, keeping themselves from laughing. Particularly if I say, yes, I'll have a banana, please. And they say, oh, banana, yes. But, we're able to say, well, yeah, look what we did with the language that you imposed on us.
You mentioned Yeats. This book, I suppose, has a shadow, which is a Yeats poem at the end of his life called The Circus Animal's Desertion, where Yeats starts to think about the actual characters he created in his poems and in his plays and takes us through them. And they all come alive for him as figures. And as though they're not flickering shadows, which they began as, but as actual living creatures that he can bring out on the stage. So this book is in some way a sort of version of that, isn't it?
Well, an early title for that was The Circus Animals.
Really?
Yeah.
What a good question that was. How delightful. You haven't just made that up.
No. It started out as dark matter, but then there were so many things that were called dark matter. It became such a cliche that I gave it up. And then I thought The Circus Animals. But then I hit on this really catchy title, Singularities. My publishers were just thrilled. But actually, I couldn't get a publisher for that book in England. That's not published in England.
So this is the American edition?
Wow. Which I think says more about the state of post-Brexit publishing in England than about my book.
Yeah.
That's what I like to think, anyway. It sold very little. I didn't expect it. If somebody had said to me, a guy, somehow he knew, he said, it didn't sell very much. And I said, I'd been horrified if it sold a lot. And I would. A book like this, if it lives, will have a long life and it will need to be read in after times. It's not a book for now. Yeah.
Let's just, we could go on for really all the time just about the first paragraph. At least I could go on about it. It would be better if you did. Just start with the beginning. Yes, he has come to the end of his sentence. And of course, that is beautifully ambiguous in that, the end of the sentence, his jail sentence, the sentence. Did you say that you like the sentence? You admire the idea of the sentence in language?
Oh, for me, yes. That's my that's my monad. That's how I work. I work by the sentence. I mean, I used to write my first novel. I think I wrote 9 versions of it. My poor wife, who was working at the time to support me, she would put her head in it. She'd come back from work with her head and say, "How's the patient today?" I would say, "Oh, not well at all." But now I work at every sentence, and I try to get as close to what I want it to be as I can. Of course, I never get it entirely what I want it to be, but yeah, I work by the sentence. I find that the sentence is, I mean, I've said many times in public that I think the sentence is the greatest invention of mankind. There have been great civilizations that didn't have the wheel, but they had to have the sentence or they wouldn't have been great, and there would have been a civilization. We do everything in language, in the sentence. We declare war, we declare love. We write our wills in sentences. Our laws are, as a parent, our laws are graven in the sentence. So, yes, it is. So, thing we have.
So you start with, yes, he has come to the end of his sentence, and you end with, I won't read the whole sentence, but it includes, the last words of the book are, an infinitely full, comma, stop.
Yeah.
And so the book has a sly joke about its own shape. It begins with
Well, this, I mean, I intended this to be my last book of its kind. I would go on writing crime fiction. As a friend of mine said, "Oh yeah, you're going to gentrify crime fiction." Which might be a bad idea. But this was going to be the last one.
Yeah.
I mean, full stop meant full stop.
I think it was Philip Larkin, English poet, was quoting Oscar Wilde in order to justify Philip Larkin's feeling that his own work from, I think, his own second book to the end of his career as a poet hadn't developed really. That he said that I don't think Oscar Wilde said it, but that only mediocrities develop. And it's a great one because I came to I'm still on the first paragraph. I come to the first paragraph and I find a sentence which words are all that remain to hold the dark at bay. There's a comma in the middle. Words are all that remain, comma, to hold the dark at bay. And I went and looked and I found 1971, second last paragraph of a novel called Night Spawn. And just that paragraph ends with the words, "I love words and I hate death." And I think it says that is all.
I was very pretentious in those sense, even more pretentious than I am now. if you can believe that.
But I mean, there we are with the same idea.
Yeah, well, this is a kind of compendium of all my work. It was difficult for me because I can't bear to read my own work. I can't bear to go back. But I did revisit, I think, all of them.
Did you? I can't find actual quotes from sentences from the film.
Oh, there are quotes. Yeah.
Are there?
Yeah,
because I found
there's a direct quote from Birchwood in that where he says something about time. He says, "What are the eternal verities against which I measure these temporal aberrations?" That's a direct quote from Birchwood. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, I found the characters, the Cleaves, the Godwins, Prospero, the Lawlesses, the Bander, Gabriel Swan. You know, that, I mean, the fun part is that if you've been reading John Banville's fiction, as I have for the last 50 years, this book is a particular pleasure because you get, oh my God, look who's just arrived, Prospero, or the twins, or the circus. And so they've all, in a way, been let out of prison.
They have. But I would like to say that, you know, you don't have to have read all those other books. I mean, you know, you if you have read other ones, there's a slight spark that you think, yeah, I remember this in previous ones. But I like to think that it's self-contained. It's funny.
From the beginning as well, there's always been a feeling that you're fascinated by the idea that something is not quite real in the room and that your efforts to describe it in words make it even less so than looking at it. And this idea of the uncanny, of the coming into a space or being with someone and just feeling for a second there's something not entirely here in the here.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I find the world and life and myself utterly uncanny. You know, the German word is one of unheimlich, which means sort of unhoused. I've always felt that. I always feel like a slug, a snail that's lost its shell, and I'm exposed to the world. I'm not complaining. This is a wonderful way to be. There's only one little passage in all my books where I speak in my own voice. I mean, I speak in my voice. And that's in, I think it's a book of evidence, where a character says, I've never got used to being on this earth. I think our presence here is a cosmic blunder. And then he speculates. He says, I wonder how the people who are meant for this planet, how they're getting on one on the other side of the universe, where we were supposed to be. He says, no. They would have become extinct long ago, these gentle earthlings, for how would they have survived in a place made to contain us? That's true. I think we are the most terrible and the most successful virus this planet has ever known. And one day, probably soon, Mother Nature may decide, no, this can't go on. I did have high hopes for COVID, but it disappointed me. But this avian flu is on the way, so. Of course, I'm joking, but I'm not an anti-humanist, but I'm a post-humanist. I don't regard human beings as the center of the universe or even the center of this world. To me, people are figures in a landscape, and their surroundings are just as important to me as the people themselves. Now, this drives many of my readers absolutely crazy. One of them said to me one day, why are you always talking about the fucking weather, I said, but we live in the weather. This is literally, we swim in it the way fishes swim in the sea. This is our element. Why wouldn't I talk about it? And also, I think we're influenced far more than we realize by the atmospherics around us. On the other hand, nothing is more boring than talking about the weather. That was another good thing about COVID. For about 9 months, people stopped talking about the bloody weather. They could talk about COVID. Have you had your shot yet? Does any of this make sense?
Yes, it's just great. But I suppose the point is that if you think with that sort of certainty about ideas of, say, reality or ideas of why we're on the earth, and you also see it, your own opinions, as a sort of sly joke, you then, when you're writing paragraphs or sentences, can come up with something in between that gives you a sort of odd energy, which often happens at the end of sections of this book. I mean, this one, for example, which I think is particularly beautiful. A sigh, a breeze, the faintest stirring, then all still again, as if the all is ever still. That lovely business of trying to be accurate, trying to move in on something there. I see the scene enclosed in a vessel of most fragile glass. My busy little creatures, your characters, confined in a flask, with a curved and intricate image of the kitchen window reflected in miniature on its rounded cheek. So that's the next paragraph, just a few words. Someone must watch, it is said. Someone must be there. Someone. So in other words, here you are arguing with yourself.
That's stolen from Kafka. That's stolen from Kafka.
Which?
Someone must be there, someone must watch.
Directly?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what it's from. It's from one of the letters to Felice. And they spent a weekend together at last. He's finally consented to go to bed with her. I think it was a great disappointment all round. And she's left the hotel, and he's sitting in her place where she used to sit when they would have dinner. He said, I'm sitting in your place on the balcony where we used to have dinner. And he said, I'm here. Someone must be here. Someone must be there. Someone must watch. Which I think was one of those beautiful things.
Yeah.
And Kafka was that.
But it's in a different context here, isn't it? I mean,
well, of course.
It seems to me
that's the point about when you take things out of context and you move them into new context, they take on a new resonance. It's like touching a spider web, the whole thing shakes. And the big spider comes out.
Speaking of spiders, there's a lot about flies and spiders in this book. That it gives you, I think, a way of... Well, you tell me, it gives you a way of describing, sir, look at those tiny busy flies above that miniature bay tree's neatly barbered globe. What is it they're weaving?
Well, I do. I mean, I think flies are one of the most beautiful insects, one of the most beautiful creatures. I mean, if you look closely at a bluebottle, it's the most exquisite thing. Its colours are we think of flies as black. They're not black. They're iridescent, opalescent. Their wings are astonishing, and they're always so busy. They're like drug people in town. I was in town the other day, and drug people they're always in a hurry somewhere, and so are flies. And they're always washing their faces. And they're wonderful creatures. And spiders are astonishing things. Have you ever seen a spider standing on a leaf and throwing that line of silk across to another leaf? It is an astonishing phenomenon. Absolutely astonishing. One of the most amazing feats in the world. This little thing with all this stuff in its belly, and it pulls out a thing, and then it begins to build a web. I mean, we live in a world of wonders. It's only because we got used to it that we're not standing. And I do think that this is the job of the artist, and I know you do too, to stand in a trance of amazement before this world, this strange place that we're thrown into. Your concern is more people than mine.
I'm coming to that. All shall return down to the moonlight between the trees, the spider at its web. Or a shiny... Sorry?
That's Nietzsche. That's from Nietzsche.
Oh, come on, give me a break.
Friend of mine.
Oh, come on, hold on.
Did you write any of this?
Did Nietzsche actually, all shall return down to the moonlight between the trees, the spider at its web?
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. Okay, he didn't write... Who wrote Deirdre? I'm reading the next sentence at random, okay? Deirdre speaks... No?
No, of course not. It wasn't a Deirdre.
But I suppose your interest in this idea of finding something that disgusts other people, such as flies, or indeed fascinates people, but only mildly, such as spiders, is a way out of a dilemma which has to do with that you're not interested, really, in psychology.
Oh, no. I mean, one of my mottos is from Kafka, never again psychology. No, I don't. All we know of people is the surface of them. I'm an anti-Freudian. We can't know other people. You know, you live with a person for 50 years, and she or he will turn and say something. And you think, what? I don't know this person at all. It doesn't have to be something momentous, just some small remark. My wife, shortly before she died, I said to her, we're talking about something about the afterlife. I said, but we don't believe in the afterlife, do we? She said, well, I don't know. I thought, my God, I thought we agreed on that for the past 50 years. And it wasn't because she was dying. I mean, she wasn't afraid of dying at all. It was just that here was a side of it that I didn't know anything about. And all human beings are like that. I know what you mean. I'm not interested in what they do. I'm interested in what they are. Because people, you see, you're caught up in this dilemma, just as all novelists are, that we have to deal with a species which lives in a constant state of self-delusion, of self-deceit. In order to live, we have to lie. You know, for instance, we have to tell ourselves, well, I won't die. Hemingway is supposed to have said, you know, how can we live knowing we shall die? And it is an extraordinary thing. I mean, we're sitting here, and in 50 years, that's making 75, we'll all be gone. And there'll be new people here, perhaps doing the same thing. This is, again, an extraordinary thing. So we have to, but how are we to write about people who are constantly deluding themselves? How are we to find the truth? How is to strike through that to some essential truth? That's very difficult indeed. Probably impossible. But it's fun trying.
And I suppose the idea gives you energy, how little we know, because you are fascinated by ideas of chaos and also by ideas of order. You're fascinated by chance, but you're also fascinated by how a pattern emerges. I mean, these things interest you not as a way, I suppose. As a novelist, you have to dramatize something. Is that true?
You have to what?
Dramatize something.
Oh, yes, of course. What? This book is full of drama.
One of the moments of Emma drama occurs on page 85, and it's just great stuff where you're talking about just say that evening. So once you ever start a paragraph that evening in a novel by you, you know there's trouble coming. You know that evening. But you know if Dickens writes that evening, still jittery from travel fever and elate on this successful outcome of our dealings, the pair of us went on the town together. Watch the cliche. If there's a cliche like went on the town, it's going to cause trouble. Went on the town together, seeking what diversions we might in the Grote Apfel, as the ruddy-cheeked Dutchman cheerfully but unimaginatively called the conquered city. We had booze, broads, a barroom fight, and a night in the cells. What booze? And in the morning, a crapulous and shamefaced court appearance, followed by summary deportation and a thunderous warning never to show our faces in this town again. No, of course we didn't. Honestly, you'd believe anything. You wrote that. And that's not Nietzsche.
No, that's not Nietzsche. That's not Nietzsche. No, I've always loved, and we've talked about this before, you and I, and I think it's true of every novelist, we're fascinated by the relation between the book and the reader. You know, you can put anything into a novel and the reader will believe it. And I mean, I'm a reader, you know, you can read science fiction and you believe it. I've just read a novel by Mary Morrissey's wonderful novel, which the premise of it is that when Joyce and Nora Barnacle went to Trieste, Joyce left Nora Barnacle at the railway station. He went off to see about a job, and he got into a fight and got put in jail, and he left her there. And the premise of this is that what if she didn't stay? And she goes off and has another life. It's a wonderful book. Right. Wonderful book, coming out in September. I think it's kind of a masterpiece. I read it once. I have to read it again.
They have a wind in Trieste called Labora. And I know this because you go into a shop and you forget to close the door in full as you went in, and they're all shout, Labora, meaning shut the door or Labora is going to come in. It comes down from the Alps and sort of twists around. And Nora, he didn't just leave her, he left her in Labora, which went around her. But
how did I get onto that?
Oh, we were talking about...
making fiction.
Yes.
Fiction is an extraordinary thing. I mean, and you know, it's so powerful. You can get yourself lost in Madame Bovary or Ulysses, and you sit down to have dinner with your partner, and you know, for about 10 minutes, Madame Bovary and Leopold Bloom, or Molly Bloom, are more real than the person sitting opposite you. It's a very strange phenomenon. And they're made out of words. They have no existence. I mean, they have no physical existence. They haven't even got a metaphysical existence. They're just words. And I don't know about you, but I always despise writers who say, no, the characters took over. I always assume they're either fools or they're lying. Because the characters don't take over, you know. We're, as Richard Ford said recently, somebody asked him that question. I was doing a gig with him somewhere. And he said, no, they're marionettes. We take off the strings and put them in the box and put them in the attic. They're gone. And but yet they have, your Thomas Mann, your woman in Brooklyn. I mean, these people they have an extraordinary vividness that is inexplicable. Because it's just it's black marks on a white space, you know. And you know, people talk about reading, and one should read, great literature. I don't care what people read. Reading the back of a cornflakes packet is still that extraordinary thing of turning these marks into ideas, vistas, images. It's an extraordinary thing. I mean, it's almost as extraordinary as music.
If you say that a writer puts a flag up over a place or a sensibility or some aspect of the self or some... That in your case, it isn't, as in the case of so many, say, Irish writers or even other writers, of putting a flag up over a very specific place, but it's over the imagination itself, over the whole procedures of how sentences are made, how fiction is made. But there's an extraordinary passage in this book where you bring all your characters, or you bring some of them, to Rosslare.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so emphatically Rosslare. And he's putting a flag up, finally, over Rosslare. You know, the great Rosslare writer, John Banville. And it's just, I mean, it really is, for anyone who knows that main, you know, it's not a street, but it goes parallel to the coast where these little houses are. And
it's called Ballyless.
Yeah, Ballyless. And the Strand Hotel and the Cedars. And could you just talk to us about the place and be the impulse to make it?
Well, childhood is to, I mean, Baudelaire said that genius with a small g consists in being able to summon childhood at will. And I think this is true. Not our material, but the space out of which we work is childhood, is the past. It sustains us. And a friend of mine, every time I publish a book, he says, I suppose you've gone back to Wexford, have you? I said, well, yeah. And I return again and again, imaginatively, to that strange Garden of Eden from which I exiled myself. But yes, I mean, I do think that childhood is because, you see, let me put it this way. There's a wonderful line in Wallace Stevens' No Stories Being Fiction where he says you must look at the sun again and look at it with an innocent eye. And that's what we do as writers. We look at the world with a completely innocent eye. We say, isn't this just amazing? I don't understand this. I'm going to try to give an account of it to myself. And not just trying to find a meaning, because there is no meaning, thank God. I'll give an account of it. And, you know, you and I, at the end of our lives, we will have... What we will have left is witness. Almost in that Christian sense, we will have borne witness to what we saw. This is one human being who lived through this extraordinary predicament, and we left a record of it. A record of our effort to grasp it, to as I said, to give an account of it.
That comes in flashes in your books. I mean, in a novel like The Book of Evidence, there's a moment where a lorry at night comes by, and anyone who's ever been in a bedroom trying to sleep, where through the curtains the light of a car comes, coming up first and then going down the wall slowly in a sort of square and then going again. And it comes up a number of times, that sort of way of describing something. For example, I've never read, it's a funny idea, a description of reversing a car in a book, in a novel. I mean, we all do it. At least I do it very badly. I did it once for the test and I never relearned. But she kept one hand on the wheel, placed the other on the back of her seat, half turned and peered over her shoulder and reversed the car in a wide, swift sweep, like a dressage rider backing a thoroughbred into its stable. You know, the hope is just... there are really these particular passages where you notice something in the world and then describe it as though it has not been described before or noticed very much before are absolutely brilliant in the book. There's a description of flesh. All of us, I suppose, have thought about flesh because we sort of have it. But then underneath our clothes, there is our skin. The largest of the human organs, for yes, an organ it is. Skin, for him, is a subject of the deepest fascination. How do we not marvel at it endlessly, this sturdy, pliant sheath that holds in our insides so discreetly, and for the most part with such efficiency, preserving our modesty and shielding from common view the inner fester. And then underneath this, there's dark laughter. I mean, forget dark matter for the moment, but dark laughter, I think, I'm hearing a comic undertone of the whole idea of this skin and covering.
Yeah. There's a nice paragraph in it too about scabs. Remember scabs? Scabs, do you remember scabs? Maybe.
We don't have them as much, do we?
Children don't play anymore, so they don't get scabs. We used to get constantly.
Yeah, scabs on your knees.
And the scab would have to ripen to a certain point where you picked it off, you know. And it would, if it wasn't ripe, you'd get a slight, you'd say, okay, leave it till tomorrow. And then you picked it off. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, beautiful, like a little ruby, essentially. And underneath it, there was this incredibly fresh, perfect skin, you know. We never saw skin like that except under scabs.
And on the subject of chairs, which I noticed there's some here, if you've ever thought about a life a chair is forced to lead, look at it, crouched down there all day on all fours, as if paying obeisance and in constant awareness of the inevitability of being sat on at any moment by any bottom, lean or fat, clean or otherwise, no, that's clean or otherwise, that thinks to stop and plonk itself unceremoniously down. There should be a ritual to be performed before one sits, a little curtsy, say, or some sort of art of artsy-versy genuflection. We owe it to those long-suffering beasts of burden who bear us up with nary a protest, save an occasional squeak, or once in a way, a rare way, a collapse. Now, you're really enjoying yourself here.
Yes, of course I mean, well, if it was going to be the last one, then I better have a good time when I'm doing it. Yeah, I did. But also, you know, one of the things about that I didn't expect about being old is that it's a comic condition. I don't just mean forgetting what you went upstairs to get and so on. There's something comic about the dissolution of the self. My wife and I used to talk about this. The falling apart of this self that, you know, when we got into our 20s finally, we got past all that adolescent horror and so on. Suddenly we were these beings, you know, these invincible beings. And then you get to your middle age, and middle age is over and like that, and then suddenly you're old. I mean, yesterday I was 37, today I'm 77. And there is I said, it is funny, you know, it is, you know, be confident, the young. It does get, at least it gets funny for me. I find myself hilarious. You know, I find myself stumbling around. And, I particularly find it hilarious that people help me. If I'm getting up out of a chair, I always find an arm under my arm. I want to say, get away, what are you doing? Get away from me. But they mean well, of course, because, you know, I'm old. But I remember Stravinsky saying that when he was crossing the road when he was ancient, he was 90-something, and he said you could see people looking at him thinking, I better get a look at him because I won't see him again. You know, he'll be gone. And you know, there's a comedy to it. Yeah. And this book is suffused with, even though there's only one old woman in that, but it's suffused with the comedy of our falling apart. Because, you know, as I said, we go up from adolescence through our glorious 20s and even more glorious 30s. And then, you know, like the trees outside that will be beautiful for another 3 weeks, and then they'll start becoming slightly ingrayed. That starts, we don't even notice it in the 40s. But then, as I say, it's a total collapse from there. You know, I remember having dinner with a friend of mine, Cillian Murphy, actually, the actor. I'm very fond of.
I won't be needing this, so...
good. Sorry, am I talking too much?
No, you're great. You're absolutely great.
Anyway, I said...
That's what we need to hear.
I was having lunch with him on his 40th birthday, and I said, Cillian, I said, words of Lambert Strother, live all you can. It's a mistake not to. The train only stops at the station once. I said, do that lousy film that will pay you $2 million, you know, have that affair, you know, make a fool of yourself, because before you know it, you'll be 70. And didn't you find that well, of course, you're not 70.
But I soon will
journey
be.
From,
I mean,
but the journey from 40 to, I mean, you know, it was a long uphill climb before that. And then you get to the top, you're sort of 45-ish or so, and then it's total, the clown's floppy trousers trips him up, and you just tumble down the other side.
I always feel if you have all your hair, that it's, you know...
Nothing to do with hair. It's so ironic. You always say this, you know. And
you have all your hair. Look at you.
I cannot see the point of having hair. I would love to be bald. I really would.
Okay, well, we do a transplant.
Oh, yeah.
No, hold on. I need to go back to something, because you got me on that Kafka. Because I wasn't ready for it. I didn't know that was Kafka wrote that. I think, and also, I still don't trust you on it. But I don't trust you on the Kafka. But you did move something that he was writing about domestically. You know, someone, into some other realm, which is almost metaphysical. I mean, suggesting someone. And I'm interested in that because at the end of part one, you actually start. I mean, this is pretty beautiful. And I summon up the others, all the success of others who will be hereafter I am gone, and for whom the air will pipe again, perhaps like this, of an evening, in the fading light. And I say to myself that despite everything, even on such inconsiderable evidence, it cannot all be for nothing. So I'm taking that in the same context as those sentences about someone, and I'm asking you could you just comment on that? Maybe would be the best question.
Well, maybe the best way to do it is to quote a little bit from Wilkins' Duino Elegies. And I think it's a very beautiful piece of poetry. This is a Stephen Spender translation. He says, he's asking, you know, why bother to live? You know, it's so trivial. And so he says, because being here is much, because all this that's here, so fleeting, seems to require us, and strangely concerns us, the most fleeting of all. Isn't that beautiful? And that seems to me, in a way, it sums up my aesthetic, I suppose. Being here is much. I mean, it's trivial and it's comic and it's ridiculous and it's wicked and it's all those things, but it also is an extraordinary thing. I mean, you know, I do believe that that we're here by mistake, because it's a beautiful, gentle world that's constantly looking away from us. I mean, you notice how trees are constantly looking away from us? They're saying, oh my God, those ants are down there again. Again, when I was doing that gig with Richard Ford, I said that our predicament is that we're pirouetting on the way to the gallows. And Richard at the end said, I view human life as we're ants in a fucking cupcake, you know? Which I thought was wonderful. And yet, what things we do. And ants, by the way, are remarkable creatures. So in comparison to ants, not necessarily bad.
Yeah, but I'm still reading this, it cannot be all for nothing, as suggesting more than that.
Well, there is no beyond for me. I mean, if you're believers in the audience, please forgive me, I don't mean to offend you, but for me, there is nothing beyond this. This world is heaven and this world is hell. I've been extraordinarily fortunate to have lived in a time of relative peace, and I think of my world as the old world, the world in which high art was still regarded as something to be aspired to. That's gone. That disappeared in the last 5 years. In which being decent, in which trying to do one's best to love one's loved ones and to be nice to one's friends and not too bad to one's enemies, trying not to make enemies. That world seems to me now to be as antique as Byzantium. It happened very quickly. And yet, I do feel, yeah, it's not all for nothing.
This novel is set in the future. Airplanes have gone. Airplanes have gone.
Oh yes, yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, I've destroyed the world. It's the premise of it is that it's been, how would I put it? It's been discovered that the more scientists, for instance, think about reality, the more reality decays. So we are destroying the world. So all mathematics professors have been dismissed. Some of them are in prison because they're dangerous. And it's a little fantasy of mine. But the world is decaying. But I haven't got rid of cell phones and laptops. They've all gone. Anyway,
and there's several sort of almost casual references to the world wearing out, to this novel appearing as a sort of as time itself comes to an end, or as the world itself dissolves.
Well, you see, I mean, the again, I mentioned my much missed wife. She, when I used to say, you know, I'm going to give this up, she'd say, oh, yeah. No, I would say I can't do it because I can't get it right. She said, yeah, if you got it right, you'd give it up. If you wrote the perfect novel, then you wouldn't have to keep trying. He said, and then you'd go into politics and destroy the world. The ego, I mean, the artistic ego is a very, very dangerous thing, as we've seen. If you look at the 20th century, you know, Stalin, Hitler wanted to be a painter. I have a Jewish friend. She says, if only that Academy in Linz had given Hitler, hadn't refused him, we wouldn't have had the Second World War. Stalin wanted to be a poet. Pol Pot wanted to be a poet. Mao wanted to be a poet. All these failed artists, very, very dangerous people. How do we get on to that?
We're talking about the end of the world, the sort of decline, the sense of things wearing out.
Well, you see, yes, that's what I was going to say. That I have to take the world with me when I go. In my detective novels, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to kill off all the people in it, you know, so that there won't be any of them left when I'm gone. And in this, I try to destroy the world.
Yes, the world itself.
But I'll tell you, I have a plan. I thought this would be my last book of that kind, but I'm going to write a short novel, a novella, called The Last Man. And the world, human beings, they're gone. Something, you know, avian flu or AI or something is destroyed, and there's only one man left. And he's delighted because he's, you know, he's finally achieved absolute solitude he's always wanted. But then he discovers that there's a woman. There's a last woman as well. And they both know that they both exist, so they set out to kill each other so that it won't, so the whole grotesque circus won't start over again.
That could go wrong.
Well, you see, I suspect that the end of it will be a kind of an exhausted truce. And who knows? It'll all start up again.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the book.